You'll have some shooting coaches that say there's one type of form and way that you should shoot, and that's the optimal and that's the best way. And there's some certain truths to that, but every player's body is built a little bit differently. But there are a few things that are fairly consistent, with successful shooters. The first few, I would say, is just flow and shot pathway are typically shared elements that you see with great shooters. The smoothness typically of where they're picking it up and they're releasing the basketball is very smooth. Their shot pathway is usually pretty efficient. You have very rare situations where a person's shot is upside to the other side and then they make it consistently. It just doesn't happen. You may have a player that holds the basketball a little bit different, that starts the ball in maybe a different spot, but their pathway and their flow is typically very smooth into their shot. And that's a shared element that all great shooters have. The other piece is consistency. You could have a really good looking shot. I think, when I was young and I was playing, I had a pretty good form when I was shooting, but I was very inconsistent with my shot. Sometimes I would push that basketball. Sometimes I would really flick my wrist. Sometimes I would extend out. Sometimes I wouldn't. And even though no matter what I did with my shot, it looked decent, it was not consistent. So I missed a ton of shots. And I remember coaches would be like, your shot form is not broke by any means. And you can get hot, when you're feeling good, but it's just not consistent because you're not doing the same thing over and over and over and over. So the biggest thing for me is certain players, they can't get their elbows in because of their shoulders and just the ability to turn their wrist properly. Some players, if they get their elbow in, their wrist can only go this far over. It can't turn all the way here for a complete flick through. So telling a player to get their elbow in would actually hinder their shot if that was one thing that you were really focusing on. And that's something actually that I talked through with former NBA shooting coach John Townsend. Players' bodies are built differently. Their mobility, their flexibility is different. Whatever works for you, whether that's getting your elbow here or maybe getting in a little bit more, is all dependent on your wrist and your elbow and your shoulder flexibility. So if I can get to that proper shooting form, elbow in, my hand underneath, and I can follow through smooth, with that gooseneck toward the hoop, I'm going to do that. But if my body physically won't allow me to do that, then I may need to adjust my hands. I may need to adjust my body, how I shift a little bit into my shot. Now, if I do that and it works for me and I'm consistent with it every time and I'm making shots, well, then you're going to build those great habits with your shot. You're going to feel good about it. And that's where you see NBA players or great shooters that don't have a beautiful or perfect looking form still be great shooters in the long run.